Hello,
everybody.
Welcome to another amazing, the most dynamite, spectacular show on the internet today.
Full of razzle dazzle and God only knows what.
Consensual conversations.
Ay.
What are we talking about today, Rachel?
Ooh, so I feel like we've been talking a lot about consent in the before you get into a relationship space.
Yeah.
I want to talk about consent once you are in a relationship, especially a long-term relationship.
Wait a second. I'm already in the relationship. I have to keep consenting and acknowledging my partner's consent?
Yeah. I know it's like a huge bummer.
Why did I even get
I don't know, man, but there was a ruling at some point that, like,
Well-
no, actually, husbands can sexually assault their wives.
that
That didn't happen very long ago, but
that stopped it. It
made it illegal.
It made
I don't
it
know if
illegal.
It stopped it.
It was a thing in life all the way up until that
Yeah,
point.
But I think we really need to restate over and over again that once you're in a long-term relationship, your partner is still their own person, and you are still your own person with your own thoughts and feelings that change constantly.
Yeah. I'm going to add to that. I think a lot of people's relationship troubles stem from the fact that they forget that they're dating a person and not an extension of themselves. There is this assumed, like, well, I'm feeling this way and you're in a different page. And now because we're on different pages, I'm upset with you. So like, for example, like right now, and I have an amazing partner that we can navigate this. My wife is getting up really early every day and she's going to a bakery and she's physically doing a ton of work. I'm at home consulting and writing and thinking.
And doing a great job of
that
it.
is like what my job is. But like in the difference in our relationships, when she comes home, I want to go out and do shit. And she wants to sit and do nothing. And so our weekends are now what would create conflict in a lot of people's relationships, where she's like, it's the weekend. Holy shit. I want to watch TV. I want to wear a big hoodie blanket and curl up on the couch.
And I don't want to talk to anyone.
Right. And I'm like, I've been in the house all week. We need to go do stuff. I'm going to lose my shit if we just sit around. And we both have to acknowledge that, A, we're two different people. Mm-hmm. Neither one of us are wrong in this scenario to want the things that we want. And, you know, there's a lot of negotiating that happens, and that's what consent is.
And I think there's an unrealistic expectation in a long-term relationship that you and your partner are going to want the same things all the time, or that you're both going to be the inspiration for different things in your relationship all the time. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes there are roles that we tend to take on in relationships, like my partner takes the lead when it comes to like domestic duties around the house. He's always thinking about those projects. And I, on the other hand, I'm like, what's the next like date night we can have? What's the next thing, adventure? What's the next trip we can take? But getting settled in those expectations can be very damaging when perhaps circumstances or feelings change. And then you're like, wait, why aren't you doing the thing you're supposed to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, well, because the situation is different.
Well, we as people go through cycles. I'm going to say, you know, people give this advice all the time. You know, how do you navigate a long-term relationship? And communication is the number one.
Key.
The number one thing. And there's also, and kind of what we're tapping into today is, it's not just about communication, but really understanding and creating space for where your partner is at in times that they're in a drastically different place than you. And those phases can last a long time.
They can last years.
Yeah.
And not only prioritizing communication, but also knowing how and when to communicate.
Right.
Just there's a lot of nuance within that. There
Yeah.
are times where you can try to communicate and you will not be heard. There are ways in which you can try to communicate and you will not be heard, which isn't a good feeling for anybody.
Yeah.
So check-ins are needed.
Man, I'll tell you, and again, having relationships, there's a lot that goes into it. So us offering advice and diving into this stuff is like, yeah, easier said than done
Sure.
with a lot of different things, and even knowing the things don't necessarily help you. Speaking of your communication and when to have the talks, I had a partner in a relationship that was very intense. And one of the things that made it so intense was we needed to communicate about things that were happening at drastically different times.
Ooh.
So when there was a conflict, I'm a person that's like, let's talk about it. I got nothing to hide. Let's charge right into that thing. I'm ready to digest. If we need to go for a walk for a second or whatever to kind of like cool the emotional feels and then step into it. But like, I'm ready. I'm always ready to like have the conversation. She needed days to process the things that were happening. And I wanted to be a good teammate and give her all of that time. And part of that meant that like, and this is where our conflict came from, it was the most insane experience for me to like have a conflict come up and then have to wait fucking days. It might as well have been years.
That would be a bit much for me personally.
Yeah,
So
like,
I get your frustration.
I mean, like no communication,
Ooh.
disappearing for days, and then coming back together like 3 days later to talk about the thing that happened days ago. And for me, it's like, oh my God, we lost all this fucking time. We've been existing in this conflict space for such a long, unnecessary feel. And I say unnecessary in my emotional process. It was very necessary for her.
Sure. Absolutely. And I certainly understand that. I get very emotional and I get very heated, and I reach a point where I realize, oh, I'm not going to say anything productive at all right now. So I need 20 to 40 minutes to go play a really stupid game on my phone that
Yeah.
requires no brain, while my brain can kind of work things out and calm down in the background. And then I'll come back. And I agree to coming back and talking about this.
Which I highly suggest for people. Do not have a challenging conversation full of emotions. You both need to have.
They're going to bring up emotions if it's a big
Sure.
conversation, no matter what.
Yeah.
But get to know yourself well enough
Yeah.
that if you are feeling the anger, the sadness, if you are hearing the stories in your head more than you're hearing the words from your partner, call a timeout.
Yeah.
Ask for a timeout.
So this, what we're talking about, is consent, even in having conversations.
Because it is a constant back and forth.
Because in both of our examples, had ourselves or our partners at the time forced the conversation when the other person was not ready, holy shit, would that have been a nightmare and a shitstorm.
It
that
just
we
goes,
walked
it
into.
just spins off the rails immediately. Because now it's not about the thing you're actually talking about. It's about the fact that you are heightened and things are coming out quickly and you're taking things really personally.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you ever have one of those fights where you go, wait, what were we even fighting about?
And you violated their consent.
Yeah.
If somebody made the firm boundary of like, hey, I need this amount of time, or I need to go for a walk and I'll come back and talk, and then your response to that is, no,
Stay here and hash it
I
out.
own you because this is the way that I need to deal with it.
Never go to bed angry.
Yeah.
I've gone to bed angry. And guess what? I'm less angry in the morning. Isn't that nice?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where I subscribe on that bit of advice. It really depends on the kind of person that you are.
I mean, sometimes, I've had very intense conversations with my partner and it's 2:30 in the morning and I'm hyped up
Yeah.
and I can see he's kind of tuning out. And so angry part of my brain goes, doesn't this matter to you? And then he goes, I'm so sorry. I'm tired. I'm so fucking tired.
Oh my God,
Please,
I've been there.
please just let me sleep. It's like, fine. That's a reasonable request, as much as I don't like it.
Oh, Jesus. I've had way too many of those going late into the night. I'm dying over here. I don't even know why you're upset. I mean, like I've heard all the things that you've said, and I don't think you know why you're upset. I think you're upset. I think that's real.
No, here's something that's real. I think 6 p.m. is a much better time to start a fight than 10:30.
Yes.
Because then you have hours to hash it out. Perhaps even like if you work things out and you want to reconnect, whatever that is for you, great. And you're done by what, 10 midnight if it really got crazy. You start a fight at 10:30, it's not going to go well.
Oh man, the other thing with consenting in the conversation space with your long-term partner is you really need to know yourself and what you need, and that's a discovery process. You're not going to know that right away. For example, you know, I've mapped this with my partner where if there's a time that I'm like I've really hit a wall and I'm really struggling, she will try to hold space by like just listening and being quiet and creating the space for me to talk. That's not what I need. When I'm at the space that I'm like, my ADHD has really hit me. I've hit that like such a dopamine low that I need stimulus. The thing that I need in that moment is for you to engage with me in the conversation, because I've just been struggling with the lack of engagement. And I didn't have the words for that until we got into that conversation. And I was like, I'm so livid right now that I've been talking out loud about my feelings, and she's listening. She's listening, but I'm like, fucking say something. Say something. I don't want to talk to the wall, but she also wasn't doing anything wrong in that moment. She was been like, hey, I didn't know what kind of support you needed. And that's hard because there's also, we have to be able to learn how to read ourselves in moments where we are delusioned and full of emotion.
Well,
and then communicate to our partner being like, hey, this is the kind of emotional outburst I'm having right now. This is the kind of support I need.
The way I like to put it is, this is the story that's happening in my head right now. I find framing it that way, it doesn't mean this is the truth. It doesn't mean this is something my partner is doing to me. It's just, this is what I'm hearing in my head. Let me share it with you.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, you know, sometimes with my partner, it takes a little bit longer for me to like drag it out of him. So I'll be like, hey, something's up and your emotions seem really bottled up. And he's like, I'm fine. I just have a headache. And I'm like, no,
don't play that game.
No, that's not what it is. And it takes a little bit of engagement. But once he starts going, I mean, my go-to response when I don't know what someone needs, the first thing I try to do is mirror what they're saying back to them. Just to like, hey, so just to clarify, you feel like this because this? Yeah, I hear you. Or that makes sense. Just a nice little point of validation of like, just to let you know, I've been listening. I'm acknowledging what's going on with you. And also, you don't sound crazy. That's a really nice jumping off point. I think a lot of times in arguments, if you feel like you're not being heard, it's going to make everything so much worse. So if you can throw that out first, then you can move on to, can I give you a response to that? Is there something you'd like to change? Like there's a lot of other options.
Can I ask you a consent question?
Yes.
Okay. because this is I think there's a gray area in answering this. In those moments, as an intuitive person who is looking at the other person and being like, I know something's wrong with you. Are we violating their consent by continuing to invade their space after they've given us an answer? Because our partners do have a right to like not talk about stuff.
Absolutely.
And there's also a difference in being like, if you don't want to talk about it, say like, I'm going through something, I don't want to talk about it. Don't tell me you have a headache, or don't tell me you're
Yes.
fine, because I know that you're not.
Yes.
And then I'm going to prod into your personal space to unearth those things.
I think in my relationship, I mean, if we're being really black and white about it, no, it's probably not the best thing to do. But relationships are not black and white.
For sure. Yeah.
And consent and negotiating comfort is also not black and white. So in my relationship, I think what normally happens is I'll check in a few times in a row. Sometimes that's over the course of a few days. And if I'm still getting met with the I'm fine,
Yeah.
if I'm still getting met, because something else that I know about my partner is that he is very concerned with my feelings. And sometimes he doesn't like to share things because he doesn't want to make me sad or upset me.
Yeah.
And we've had a conversation over and over again, which is where I think the trust part of consent in a long-term relationship really comes in, which is you need to trust me that I'm an adult and I can handle what you're going to say to me. And I need to trust you that if you say something along the lines of, I don't know if I can really talk about it right now, I need to trust that you will come and talk to me about it eventually.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, I'm going to lose my shit and you're going to lose your shit too. It's just going to come out in different ways. And so I think because of the experience that we've had with each other, because of the ways in which we know each other, there can be a little extra nudging until it gets to a point where, to me, being kept out and having someone disconnect and distance themselves from me is very hurtful. So usually what will be the start to that conversation, if it's been pushed away and shut down, is, hey, I'm feeling really sad. I'm feeling really disconnected from you.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to talk about it first, can I share what's going on with me?
That's good. Yeah. I asked that question and I love your answer and I agree with you on all those points. I'm a very intuitive person and I know what my friends and family and partners are going through without them saying things. And I also acknowledge they have a right to personal privacy. And that's a weird thing of just being like, to me, you're kind of advertising that there are things that are going on, or that you're not okay, that you're struggling with this particular thing, or that you're frustrated with this, or you're mad about this thing for me. Hello, there's my wife to speak of the devil. Don't listen.
Entering the room without
No, I'm
consent.
kidding. You can. But I also I have to acknowledge that, like, if they didn't come out and say something, I really shouldn't be poking and prodding into like
Absolutely.
something that is in there.
Yeah.
I know it's hard because like
it's true.
it's coming from a place of
It's
like
totally
love and
true.
support, and this is part of the conversation in long-term relationships. Some of the things that create conflict in your relationship are when you're trying to help.
So many, actually.
so many things.
Which
And-
I actually kind of think most of them. I think in outside of really shitty and toxic relationships, I think generally people have their partner's best interest in mind, or at least they're not trying to cause them harm.
Yeah.
Right? You may be keeping something from someone because you don't want to hurt their feelings, or because you know the conversation is going to be a tough one and they have a presentation at work tomorrow, or there are a million justifications, and sometimes they're valid to the partner and sometimes they're not. But that's why it's important to check in about that stuff. Be like, yeah, you know what? Something is going on. I'm kind of hesitant to share it with you because of this. And then what you're doing is you're giving your partner the information that they need to make an informed consent decision.
Right. But the thing is, though, is what you have talked about and the words that you're using, because you're seasoned at communicating, is you're saying, hey, as a self-aware person, I'm aware that I'm not ready to talk about this, and I'm communicating to you that word. A partner walking around saying, I'm fine, is not fucking communicating. And in that situation, I think that warrants prodding, because it's like, you're not fine.
Right.
Like if you need space, tell me you need space. But like, don't tell me.
Don't lie to my face.
No, don't tell me nothing is happening in this fucking room. And I think that becomes the line of whether we're poking and stuff.
Yeah, I do think there needs to be some acknowledgement that like something's off here.
Yeah.
At least let me know I'm not crazy, right? What I was just saying, step one, can you please just validate my experience that something weird is going on here?
Yeah.
We don't have to get into it, but I do need to know that we are experiencing the
same
reality.
Thing. That's it. Don't gaslight.
Base level.
I think that this is a good transition to talk about privacy. Again, the key point of this long-term consent is that your partner is not an extension of yourself. They are their own person. Being there, and this is another dynamic that you're navigating, is like you're a team. So like, let's like imagine we're like a military situation. Right. We're a team. We need to be on the same page for the missions that we go on.
Yes.
Okay. But we have different clearance levels and may know different things that the other person does not need to know.
Well, what comes up in my brain is that when you are in the outside world, I think the team priority is justified, right?
Yeah.
Because if once you like leave like the space where it's just the two of you and you're in the outside world and you're like on the defense from whatever the world is going to throw at you, then I think it's really useful to think of yourselves as a team. But when you are in your private and intimate space, I think that whole like, oh, when you get married, like in the eyes of whatever, you are no longer two people, you are now one. Oh, well, if you're one person, why don't you want the same things at the same time? Right. That must mean something's wrong.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make sense. And putting blame on yourself or on your partner because you don't always want the same things as them when you're supposedly this unit, that can lead to a lot of disappointment and hurt feelings.
Do you have a right to know everything that's going on in your partner's brain?
First of all, that's impossible.
Right.
And second of all, no. You don't have a right. You have a privilege to ask about it.
Sure.
And if they want to tell you, that's a privilege as well. And I think everybody can decide for themselves what that line is. I wouldn't want to be with someone who doesn't share anything about what's going on in their brain.
No.
That would feel weird and alienating.
Yeah.
But like, my partner has a journal. I don't read that journal. When my partner goes into therapy, I'll ask him, how did therapy go? And if he doesn't want to talk to me about it, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because it was his therapy session.
Yeah.
He is allowed to stay in his universe. We all have this universe inside of us, inside of our brain, that is all of our current and past and future experiences. And I think the thing that is special about relationships is that that person is letting you in. Not that you're fucking breaking down the door
Yeah.
and forcing your way in,
Yeah.
but that they are choosing to share with you.
Do you think that your partner always owes you the truth?
About what?
Well, I'm starting off wide in general, but like,
I think
so here's
I
like stepping into the like the white lie space. If it would hurt your feelings, like for example, like we don't tell fucking anybody the very real reality that is happening in our head, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Like we should be honest with our partners, and there is a
To a
line
point.
to a point. Like we don't. I don't think that there are reasons to lie, especially when it comes into things that you are dealing with in life together. However, you don't go up to your partner and be like, "Oh man," and like after you had like just had oral, and she's like, "How was that?" And you're like, "Oh God, that was pretty good, but I've had better." You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like that you're like that was a in all the experiences that's like maybe top 20, but there are 20 that are above that. Those things do not.
I think that brings into question the asterisk that you kind of have to put next to you owe people the truth, which is
Yeah.
you need to ask yourself, is the truth helpful? Is the truth necessary?
Right.
And when is the truth necessary? Is the whole truth necessary?
Yes.
Right? Because, hey, I just gave you a blowjob. How was that? That was good. I love you. Both of those things are very, very true.
Sure.
Period.
Yeah.
They're true.
Yeah.
And I think further elaborating of I've had better, also true. Is it helpful?
Well, sometimes, not in that exact scenario way I phrased it. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you have to say, you just had a really fun, and we're taking this out of the oral sex space of like,
Sure.
let's just say you had sex. That your partner is like, God, that was all of these things for me. And if it was not that for you, or really you're in a space where it actually kind of was not great, and and you don't feel good about what just happened, that is a moment that you need to be truthful.
Absolutely.
Because it is helpful.
Helpful for you. It's
Right.
helpful for you and your sense of comfort and your sense of safety
Yeah.
and your future sexual interactions.
Yeah.
That would be that to me that would be considered helpful.
Right.
I
Because this comes into the space of like, we have to continue in our consent conversation that like we are two individuals that may have had different experiences with something.
Absolutely.
And then this is something for somebody else on the receiving end of a statement like that. Like, let's say you go to a barbecue and your partner's like, I had the best fucking time, blah, blah. And you're like, actually, it was I had a bad time. And then they're like, man, you always make all these things. And like, we were having such a good time. It's like, no, you were having a good time. You had a good time. I didn't. And I love,
see, that's
and
the
I love
point
that
in the
you did
conversation
have,
that I would hate.
right. I love that you had a good time. I didn't. I wish I did, but I didn't. And we need to also be able to create space, because our partners are on different pages, where they say something that is very much in conflict with whatever wave we were currently riding. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah, in that situation, I think that's an opportunity to move towards everybody enjoying the barbecue next time in this metaphor. So it's like, you know what, I really wanted to have a good time, but I got caught up in conversation with this one person and they said some things and it really just put me in a bad mood.
Sure.
Or,
Yeah.
you know what, I received a text an hour into it and I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to distract you, but it just totally changed my mood. Or sometimes in the case of someone with depression and mental illness of like, you know what, I really wanted to have a good time and I was just fucking sad the whole time and I just wanted to go home. I am glad I went with you and I'm glad you had a good time.
Yeah.
But I think, again, that expectation, setting that expectation that your partner is going to be on the same page as you, it takes work. It's not easy to make space for your partner to have a different experience. But like, again, they are giving you part of their world.
Yeah.
So you either you can't demand of like, my partner owes me everything that's going on with them, and my partner owes me to be on the same page as me all the time. Those two things are wildly incompatible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's going to take some navigation
I,
to figure out what
I just
you
want to
want.
acknowledge there's so many great things happening in chat. I love that you guys are digging all these things with each other. Still on the talking about sexual performance back and forth with their partner, which is great communication things. When you're the one communicating it, it is also equally important to be a person that is able to hear those things and not hear them as
You're wrong.
This is part of the reason why in therapy people use I statements. And this is something that a lot of people don't know how to fight for or advocate for. I have to advocate for this all the time. And the end of me being able to say, hey, this thing is upsetting me, I'm bugged by this, doesn't mean you did a bad job, doesn't mean you failed me or let me down in some way. It doesn't mean I'm criticizing you or critiquing the thing that happened. I'm just saying
This is how feel.
I feel when XYZ happens, or this is how I feel.
But God, it's really hard separating those things.
It
isn't
is.
It
It
It's
is.
super, super difficult.
Because you can also say things like, well, they're like, well, I'm the one that did that, or like my actions did it. It's like, yeah, it is. And or I've had this conversation, which I've had with a few partners, but one of the things that will come up is like, well, now I feel guilty. And my response is like, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because
I understand why you
I
feel
understand
that way.
I understand why you feel that way.
Totally.
Because if I did something that unintentionally upset you, I would also feel guilty because I really care about how you feel.
Yeah.
Your feeling of guilt is not me putting blame on you. It is an acknowledgement of the thing that like we have a deep connection. You're feeling partial responsibility for the state that I'm in. These are the very real things that happened.
But no matter what, you are always responsible for your own feelings.
Yes.
Period. Yeah. I had a conflict with my partner the other night. We went out to dinner and we had a great time. And then I was looking forward to like, you know, he'd been puttering around the house all day. He'd been working, fixing things. And I was like, oh, this
Chopping
is
wood.
awesome. Chopping wood. And I was really looking forward to making the space for us to connect and be able to relax and not think about all the things that needed puttering and doing around the house. So we went out to dinner. We had a really nice night. We got back and, you know, he and our roommate went out to smoke a little weed. And I was kind of like on the couch waiting for him to like come back and hang out with me, either like watching a movie or maybe, hey, do you want to go upstairs or, you know, whatever it was going to be. And he came back inside and started puttering again and started doing tasks and things that needed doing and chores. And it just made me really sad. And so when we were getting ready for bed, he noticed something was wrong. He's like, what's up? And I said, I'm just really sad because we didn't get to hang out after we got back. And I said that knowing that he would feel guilty, knowing that he would be upset that he was feeling guilty when he was doing things that needed to be done. Like there's no question. And I know
Nobody did anything wrong in this scenario.
Nobody did anything wrong in this scenario. It's just that what was going on in his brain was things need to be done. And what was going on in my brain was I need time to connect with my partner. That's it. They were just two different experiences of what needed to happen when we got back from dinner that night.
Yeah. Did you, and this is just sort of so we can lead to other advice in this, did you ask or communicate ahead of time, like, hey, this is a thing that I want when we get home? Or while he was putting around, did you say, hey, can you come join me on the couch? It's okay if you didn't, because this is a big thing that happens.
Yeah, no, honestly, I didn't. On the date when we were at dinner, I could see him like visibly relaxing and enjoying the food. And he was like, wow, this is really good. Thank you for finding this place. And I said, absolutely. I really wanted to I just really wanted to create a space with you tonight. And so I also didn't want to be like naggy. I also have this thing about like, I don't like begging for someone's attention. You know what I mean? I don't like if you want to be around me, then you want to be around me. And it doesn't make me feel good to be like, hey, could you come like talk to me and like look me in the eyes for longer than 15 seconds? That would be like, that doesn't always feel good for my ego, right? But that's my ego talking.
For sure. I mean, this goes into our very original podcast, which was I want you to want to.
Right. I wanted him to pick up on the fact that I had found this restaurant and created this space for us to reconnect.
Yeah.
And I wanted him to feel differently because I created that space. And I was disappointed.
And now your thing turned into a conversation. Mm-hmm. Easily could have turned into a fight.
So easily.
For a lot of people, this would have been, you never pay attention to me. I was over there waiting for you. And this is how most people talk to each other, which to me is confusing.
Or be like, no, I'm fine. You got the laundry done, right? Great.
Oh.
Did you get all those books organized just perfectly at 11 o'clock at night? I'm so glad you did.
And if you said that and he retaliated, he would have every reason to retaliate.
Absolutely. Yeah. That would be rude as hell. And that would be completely ignoring the fact that he was still doing something that he thought needed to be done. Like, both of these things are true. There are chores in the house that need doing, and I need to keep connecting with my partner.
Yeah.
Those are two very true things.
This is also an important thing. The phrasing and the words that you just did were so potent. They're little cuts. And the thing is like, we don't acknowledge, because we've talked about this before, that we treat our partners worse than we treat our worst enemies. And that is a thing that, like, because as human beings, we feel safe, and they have all kinds of responsibility, and they are the person that makes us the most fragile, and therefore they are potentially our biggest threat. And there are all kinds of reasons why we are less than kind to our partners.
And a lot of the same reasons we're less than kind to ourselves.
Oh, for sure.
We're not going to go anywhere. Yeah. You can't run away from yourself.
But the thing is those moments happen. And what has happened is you took like a little knife and you just like, you stabbed your partner. Yeah. And then you're like, you got to let me just stab you. If you react, I'm going to be even more mad. Right. And I'm going to stab you again.
Then you're the asshole.
And then you're the asshole. So I'm just saying all that because we do have to be careful of, man, when we have those moments and we have those reactions, we have to also acknowledge that, like, taking those stabs are not cool. Like whatever. And we don't mean to do them. And everybody does it. Everybody is guilty of it. But that is the thing that creates so much conflict in our relationships.
And it's okay to be angry about it. It's okay to be sad about it. It's okay to generally have hurt feelings about it. Yeah. But the instant that you take a mistake on your partner's side, if it's a mistake, even if it's something they intentionally did, which most of the time it's not, and you use that to take a dig at them, like, I don't think any of us want to be judged in our not best moments, right?
Yeah.
Like,
even, and it's hard. It's also hard when your relationship is full of so much sarcasm and jokes to find the moments where like,
Right.
oh, what I said was just clearly being very jokey, but I hit a button, and my wife and I have this very thing where she's like, I don't want. That's not a thing I want to joke with right now. I'm like, great,
Yeah.
I will shut
my
it down
God.
because
same thing.
other people will go, what, whatever, I'm just joking, you know what I mean, and get defensive because they're being met with a boundary.
They don't like.
They don't. Whatever. I didn't do anything wrong. So how dare you use that tone with me? It's like, doesn't matter if you did anything wrong. What I'm doing is I'm putting up a boundary right now. We have a thank you, super dark void. We have a sarcasm safe word. And my relationship needs a sarcasm safe word.
Oh, that's great.
I've talked about this before. Like when I've got like bad ADHD, like I am more sarcastic and I poke, and Allison needs a thing that's like out, like it's like
No, we have a word. We have a word in our relationship that whether it's sarcasm or anger, that what it really means is, hey, I just need you to be nice to me right now. And it's platypus.
Great.
If you're calling platypus, that means that like whatever we're in the middle of, we kind of just need
Shut it
to let it
down.
go. And I just need you to be nice to me.
Yeah.
Please. Pretty please.
I wanna wrap up our privacy segment and talk about alone time. This is something that if I can recommend to anybody in a long-term relationship is have more alone time.
Dear God, yes.
People do not appreciate how valuable it is for you to have time in your own space with your own thoughts. And you need it to recharge. You know, I've because my wife has been working so much and she's been out of the house and I've been in the house. I've been going away on the weekends on my own. One, because I need my own sort of like space, but I guess I've just been spent all time alone. So that's not necessarily true on my end. But like she needs time in a space that's not surrounded by people, because what's happened is she's been at work. She comes home. I'm there until she goes to sleep. She gets up and I'm there. She goes to work and there's people, and that cycle repeats until the weekend.
100%.
Best thing I can do is say, hey, have you had the house to yourself at all for a good period of time? Great. I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go to a coffee shop, or whatever it is.
Yeah, my partner and I had a similar dynamic. My partner works in post, so he works from home. And when I work, most often I leave the house. I'm driving all over LA. So he would get alone time in the house. And then my alone time would be maybe like shutting myself in the bedroom for a while. But it's not really alone time. And I think even if you're a social person and your battery is recharged by being around other people, you're still your own person, right? We're coming back to this whole thing of like, you are an individual person, whether or not you're in a relationship.
Yeah. And honestly, the more that you infuse that I'm an individual person into your relationship, the better it is for your relationship, because you bring things back to that space. Like when you were first dating, like maybe you lived in separate spaces, you had your own life, you were doing other things, and how attractive and fucking sexy is that they are a person that's got shit going on. And not everything is about the dynamics that the two of you share in every fucking which way. I want to answer Kyle's question. How would you go about rescheduling the important talk? Seems like at least one person would be stewing or on edge about it until the matter is settled.
You can literally schedule it.
Yeah, literally schedule it.
Like absolutely be like, hey, I understand you need space. It is really important to me that we talk about this.
Does this work for when you get
works
home
for you?
tomorrow? And not just an open, because we've talked about this about being decisive, not an open-ended.
Sure.
If I'm coming to you and you're having a hard time making a decision, I'm going to be the one making decisions. Tomorrow after work, does that work for you? No?
Yeah.
Need more time with that? Great. Tuesday morning before you go in. No, we're going to land on something.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And then you can go, okay, great. Now you got all the space. Stew.
And I also think that conflict, if it's seriously impeding you from like existing with each other in that nice easy way that we're often used to in relationships, I think maybe like, hey, I know we were supposed to go do this thing. I kind of want to put it on hold because I'm not going to be able to be present until we talk about this.
Yeah.
So can we maybe move that thing if you can't find time in your schedule? But literally fucking pull out your Google schedule.
Yeah. I think it's also really important as you spend, and this is the advantage of being in a long-term relationship, is that you really get to know your partner and you get to go, oh, I know the thing that you're stressed about. So when I listen to my wife talk about things when she's like having a lot of anxiety around something, I will ask certain questions to ascertain what specific thing is creating the stress. Is it the amount of time that you have right now? Are you feeling stressed about that? Are you hungry? Are you feeling stressed about that? Like especially when there's certain things where it's like, we'll have conversations where she'll say something that she's upset about. And I'll go in my head, not out loud. What you have just said as an ask is an impossible thing for me to predict. So for example, it's like, why aren't there these ingredients in the fridge for the meal that I was going to surprise make you right now? And I'll go, there's no way.
Oh, that's so real.
There's no way I could have known any of these things. Didn't know this was happening until this moment right now. Why are they not there? Why are the mushrooms gone? Because I ate them. And I ate them because it's food that we purchased in the house. Now,
why did you leave one Oreo in the box of Oreos and put it back in the cabinet?
The thing that is what they're saying in that moment is not the thing that is upsetting them.
Of course.
That's why you have to learn how to navigate the questions of being like, okay, I'm not gonna say that's an insane thing to ask me. I'm gonna like, okay, like, well, what do we need to have happen right now? Okay. I need, this. I'm worried about these. Okay, great. Now I'm starting to hear the like, oh, this is the list of the things that's like really going on that is creating the conflict that we're in right now.
What is behind?
What is behind
the
that
first complaint? What is behind the first question?
I can offer all of these different options, not trying to fix it, just saying if you wanted to do something. These are a variety of because what I have in the advantage of not being stressed in this moment, I have more clarity. I can look at the things. What we're looking at is in her space this is a nightmare disaster that has no answers, and I can go, actually, we got a couple.
Yeah, but as a side note, don't ever say to your partner, "Hey, I have a little more clarity on this situation now, so why don't you let me handle it?" Ooh, that is also, even though it's true, it may not be helpful in that moment.
Phrasing is pretty key.
Phrasing is key.
Is in the communication space. We kind of drift into the community. I'd love to talk about that a little bit more. Consent we just talked about how it's important for your partner to have their own lives.
And
privacy. What happens when you just don't get along with their friends?
Oh, that's rough.
They bring a person into your space, which they have every right to do because it's also their space.
Absolutely. See, my question with that is always, did you check with your partner that it was okay to bring someone into the space that both of you share? That's step one. Just like, hey, I'd really like to hang out with Dave. Is it okay if he comes by tonight? Do you have a conflict with that? Are you feeling okay? Because as much as it absolutely is your right to invite people into your space, it's also your partner's space, right? You are not a monolith. It belongs to both of you. And if the high value situation is, I want to spend time with Dave, and it doesn't matter where, maybe there's something else that can be reached. If it's, I want to show Dave the tool that I got in the garage and he's going to help me work on a project. And your partner is like, oh, I fucking hate Dave.
Yeah.
Cool. Then you can go find something to do. But
You can also negotiate the like, okay, if they're gonna come over, I've got this. You've got to communicate your own things.
yeah.
I'm gonna be home. I'm gonna be stressed. I would love to have the living room. Blah blah blah. So
Right.
if they're gonna come over,
And also,
I call dibs.
just letting you know, I'm not going to be making food for Dave. I'm not going to be fixing drinks for Dave. I don't really feel like interacting with people that much right now.
This is the key part of the consent aspect of your friend, your partner's friends. They're individuals as well. You get to set whatever fucking boundaries you want with them. Just because your partner has negotiated a certain relationship and a certain level of like trust and flow, it does not mean that they have the same carte blanche in your space.
No, absolutely not. In my relationship, the thing that gets me mad is if I was not given a heads up that somebody's going to be in or around our house.
Yeah.
Like if somebody shows up and doesn't say anything to either one of us, that's one thing. But I hate having people that are not living here in my space sprung on me. Like it really just grinds my gears. It like, that's a big trigger for me.
Yeah.
Because I need my space to feel safe and protected.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody's coming in, even if I like them, if I don't know they're coming, like, it sends my brain into a tizzy. As long as I'm just like, if someone lets me know ahead of time, I can decide for myself what my comfort level is. Is my comfort level, you know, like I'm just going to stay in our room. Can you tell them I'm not feeling well? Is my comfort level, hey, I'll come down and say hi, but I'm also working on something? Is it, oh, I haven't seen them in a while. Is it okay if I join in on your hangout? Because sometimes it's the other way.
Oh, yeah.
Of like, hey, I want to spend time with this person. Oh, I'd love to do it too. But a lot of times, like, you know, like when you're friends with a couple or when a couple is friends with a couple, there's this presumption that it's always going to be both of them at the same time. But it's okay to have different relationships with the two different people in that couple.
Yeah, I mean, it's also challenging to navigate. My wife, one of her best friends, this guy Wesley, and love Wesley. He and I have hit it off very well. We have a great friendship that is our friendship. Mm-hmm. It has started happening that he texts me more about hanging out than her. And I don't necessarily know about like how I need to set that boundary. He's not inherently doing something, but I do have the moment of being like, hey, love, Wesley is free Saturday.
Can I go hang out?
No, but just be like, hey, I'm letting you. He messaged me to see if we were doing something. He's your best friend.
Oh, that's so fun. See, for me, that's such a relief when I don't like a ton of text messages. I am not a great texter. And one of the roles that my partner has taken on in our relationship is like, he's our PR guy. He's our communications. He's our liaison to the outside, to the outside world. So for a lot
I
of
have
people,
that too on the opposite side.
right?
Yeah.
But for like a lot of people that are friends with both of us, they know if they want to see us, they will get a much faster response from him than they will from me. So they just automatically text him.
Yeah.
And for me, if I want to hang out with somebody one-on-one that's friends with both of us, I know that I have to I have to reach out to the person because I don't want to, I hate just texting back and forth on my phone all day.
What about hanging out with somebody that you're both friends with, but you don't want to bring your partner?
Honestly, I will usually just be honest with my partner about it.
Yeah.
And I'll say, hey, I want to go hang out with Nancy. I think there's something in particular that she wants to talk about. And I think it would be better if we just had a bit of a private space.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, I think my partner and I can both acknowledge that there is a different dynamic when you're talking between three people than there is when you're talking between two people.
And there's also an important thing, and this comes in the community thing. Being a human being and raising kids or whatever takes a village.
Absolutely.
You're not the emotional everything for your partner.
No.
And also, your partner talks to other people about you.
They do.
And you don't get to be privy to all of those conversations.
And ideally, they're talking about you with respect, but spoiler alert, you're fucking annoying sometimes. And your partner doesn't always want to say to you, you're being fucking annoying right now. But guess what they can say to their friend? Oh my God, she's being so fucking annoying today. And that's then that's okay. That's one of those situations where like it's kind of a relief to not have to put on that filter of the truth. Like, oh man, this is something that needs to be communicated, but I need to do it in a constructive way. You can just go to a friend and be like, oh my fucking God. We got home after a date and he started doing laundry and I wanted to kill him. Instead of being like, I feel sad we didn't get to hang out. Like, you deserve a space to say how you really feel with your whole chest.
And this is, I'm going to say this is so important. This is big advice for everybody out there because this goes against traditional relationship advice. Your partner needs a friend that they could bitch about.
Oh my God.
Like bitch,
1,000%.
bitch about you to them. Okay. Because guess what? If they don't have a person in their lives that they could vent about you being fucking annoying, they're going to come to you and they're going to say, you're fucking annoying. It needs to be said.
Absolutely.
It needs to be said somewhere.
I certainly understand the like, oh, you shouldn't hash out your relationship problems outside of your relationship. And I'm not saying violating the sacred privacy of your relationship, but I do think something that classically, again, I hate to get into like super gendered stuff, but I see this pattern pop up that women are sometimes a little more willing to share about interpersonal conflicts in their relationship with their friends.
Sure.
And men sometimes are not. And
I will say that men will do it, but they're almost never doing it from the perspective, traditionally speaking, back in the day, back in the movie space, that is meant to be a constructive conversation about their partners.
Oh no, it's just like this old chain.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Whereas like on the opposite side of things, it'll be like actually giving them sometimes more benefit of the doubt than they should even be getting. It'd be like, the other day he came home from cheating on me and he said he just really needed to do it, and like I don't know if I should be concerned. Or
was I the asshole in this situation?
It was like good that he communicated it to me. So like, I feel really yeah.
There has to be a safe space for you to just check in with what reality should be, right? Yeah. Because in this like bubble in the world of your relationship, sometimes like there are some weird things that would look very strange to an outside eye, but to you guys, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think you do need an outside perspective to be like, well, that's weird. You guys do what you want to do. That's fucking weird. But I don't think it's harmful or damaging.
Sure.
Versus, hey, that doesn't sound okay to me. Right? And I think it is really important to have somebody you trust, or more than one somebody you trust, that can kind of just give you that little bit of a reality check.
Yeah. I also, if you are a comedian like myself, you need to have a place that you could say the jokes that come up in your head that are I say a lot of them to my wife, and she's very open and very appreciative of those things. Mm-hmm. However, there are times where I have to go, oh my God, I need to say this to someone because this is the funniest fucking thing. If I was putting together a tight five, this would be the opener.
Same thing. And I know my partner is that way too. And so if something happens where I'm like, I need you to not tell anybody about this. Like even in a funny, even in a what, I'm really not comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I think generally speaking, we're both like, yeah, it's okay to poke fun at each other. It's okay to vent about each other because that's an agreement that we have
Right.
made together, and that's an expectation we've set for a very long time.
Yeah.
Which is when consent kind of comes back into it, because we have this standard that we have already talked about and set. We've seen each other do and we're okay with it. So now I know that if there is something that I don't want to be shared with a friend, it's on me to say something about it.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, we have this general agreement. I'd like to make this exception. I'd like you to respect this boundary.
Yeah. Moving out of the friend space, navigating each other's careers, work stuff. Work can create a lot of conflict in relationships, especially if somebody's like working too much or
Not working enough.
not working enough. There's also like, I think there's a lot of conversations around consent in the advice space of when it is or is not okay to give your partner advice. Yeah. How do you approach that with your teammate?
Well, I will say that for his day job, I don't know how to do his fucking job.
I don't have the expertise.
I know what he does,
Yeah.
and I know some of the like lingo. But you know, if he's like, yeah, I need to QC this episode, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
you look like you're doing a good job. Can I fix you a snack?
See, I'm in the opposite space. My wife and I have the same career.
See, that's insane to me.
Yeah.
That would drive me nuts. But on the other side, there's a pet project that he wants to work on, that he wants to grow. And so what I will do is leave an offer on the table. I'll be like, hey, I've heard you have a lot of anxiety about making social media posts about this thing that you want to grow outside of your day job. Just letting you know, I would be more than happy to sit down with you and brainstorm 30 Instagram reel ideas, because I know that entire world intimidates you and you don't interact with it as much. And like, I would love to sit down for an hour with you and support you in that way, because there are certain areas of my partner's life where I can't really support directly, but it makes me feel good. Right? It feels good to be able to support your partner in that way. So I will leave an offer on the table, and I will manage my own emotions if he doesn't take that offer. And because it's okay if he doesn't. It might hurt my feelings a little bit, but that's not on him.
Yeah.
A gift or an offer is made without expectation of what's going to come next, right? If you're giving that to somebody, it can't be with an agenda besides to give it.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I have a fucking razor's edge level of conversation we have to have when it comes to advice. A lot of the things that we do involve us helping each other with creative things, which people get very sensitive about. So, for example, like in the acting space, we do a lot of self-tapes. I help her with the tech. I've also been an acting coach for a long time, and I have a degree in directing, and like I have notes I could say. But I will tell you, most of the time I default to not. And that's just something that I've learned from like having worked. If she was someone that's like, hey, how was that? What should I do better?
Right. If
Fine.
she asks for
it,
amazing.
Great.
You have it ready to go.
But it's also really hard. And this is, and I'm going to equate it to the same thing that like we create this space for kids, but we don't create this space for adults going through things. Like if there's a kid that's like tying their shoes, you step in and tie their shoes for them. You already fucking know how to tie your shoes. Right?
Right.
you helping them do it in this moment is not going to help them. You can stay
Learn
on the
how to tie
side.
their shoe.
You can help them coach. You can answer questions for them, but they have to stumble and tie their shoes. And so like we default to like really wanting to help our partners because we're like, this would be good for you. And there's a lot of times where it's like, I've watched her do a self-tape and I'm like, oh man, I've got something that I really need to say and it would be great. And I feel like you're missing it. But like, if you feel good about it, I'm going to shut my goddamn mouth.
Right.
And
don't give somebody advice that's not asked for. I think
even sometimes, and this is the hard thing, is like, even if it would be really fucking helpful,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's really the truth of it. It doesn't matter if it would be helpful.
Right.
Because you know what? We're all human. There's always something we could be doing more or less or better or in a different way. And as an outside observer, I'm sure you see all of it because it's so much easier to see clearly when it comes to somebody else than it does to ourselves.
Yeah. It's also really important that like if they come around to advice that you were going to have given, that you don't say that either.
I was thinking that.
Yeah,
totally.
No kidding.
No kidding can perhaps be translated to, you know what? I agree with you.
Yeah.
Right? Not, I was thinking that already, but I think you're right about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
I see that.
Because both of those are saying the same thing in very different ways.
Yeah.
Right? One is supportive and one is judgmental.
Right.
And I don't want to feel judged in my relationship, but I do want to feel supported. But like, I would never be able to relax in a relationship if I thought that my partner was just like in the corner watching and judging my every move. I've been in a relationship like that and it was fucking awful.
Sure.
And I never felt safe. I never felt safe in that relationship because I felt like I couldn't ever fail. I couldn't, if I was being anything less than my best, then I felt like the affection I got was taken away. Like the love and affection was conditional.
Yeah.
And like the understanding was conditional. And it was conditional on, are you doing everything I think you could be doing to the best of what I think is your ability? It's cruel.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's, you know, this again, we're saying over and over again that navigating relationships are challenging. And
It's
even
really
when you're
difficult.
trying to do the right thing, it can be really hard. And in our career advice consent space, I won't say anything unless she asks for it. And we also have to acknowledge that she can read me knowing that I want to say something. And so when if she's not directly asking me for feedback, you'd be like, was that good? I'm like, sure. Yeah, it's great. I'm not gonna open any doors that you did not ask for.
Totally. But see, I would know that about my partner and be like, you know what? I need you to just go into another room while I do this.
I mean, sometimes, yeah, you know,
Because I'm going to see your opinion on your face. And if I don't want to hear it, then I'm just going to get in my head.
sure.
So
But-
again, it takes knowing yourself and knowing what boundaries you need to put in place.
I mean, that's something that's difficult with two artists that are being together, and we have these conversations with our partners in other avenues. It's totally okay that you and your partner do not agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people need to create more space for that.
Whew. Well, talking about creating more space, I feel like there's been a very pandemic specific work issue that I see come up over and over again, which is a lot more people are working from home.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like that workspace is not being respected by their partner. That, hey, this is my work day.
Oh, man,
This
yeah.
is my workspace. And when I am on work hours, I am not available to chat. I'm not available to do stuff around the house. And I know that might be difficult, especially if there's like kids involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because kids can get very overwhelming, or if you're caring for someone else in your home, or like pets, there's a million different things that can come up over the course of a day. But if you have to work, you have to work. And assuming that just because your partner is home, you have access to them and have access to their attention and presence, I think is a very dangerous road to go down.
Yeah.
Because your partner has the right to keep their workspace safe. They have the right to have you not jeopardize their job.
Right. Or their focus.
Or their focus.
Yeah.
Well, because if their focus is jeopardized, their job might be jeopardized.
I think that they've developed some really good tools out there for working from home and navigating this in the home life, that like they have little signs that are like busy signs that you can put outside your door, that or just again, communicating this with your partner. On days that I need to focus, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to close the door and I can't be distracted for the next period of time. But if my door is open, sure,
Great.
bop in. I'm not
Come on
doing
in.
anything that's not important. But you do need to have something that is a clear indicator of a boundary there.
A clear indicator of the boundary. And then you also need to acknowledge that there are reasons that your partner might need you, might need to get in touch with you, might something. And if the issue is, I have a really important meeting for the next 2 hours, I understand that like our kid is sick.
Yeah.
If I can have those 2 hours, then I can give you a break and I can be really present when I am done, right? It's not I get to block you out all the time no matter what, and it's not up for discussion. It's, I need this, so tell me what you need to make that okay,
Yeah.
right? It's a back and forth.
Man, see, this is the whole thing. Look at how many boundaries you still need to have, even in the relationship where you have the least potential amount of boundaries, how much consent and negotiation needs to happen all the goddamn time around everything. It never ends.
It doesn't.
It never, but it's good. I'm saying that in a good, I'm saying it in a good
But
way.
also that's the environment where
Yeah.
relationships kind of like crumble up and die, is when you're not checking in with each other.
Yeah.
And when you're not having these conversations, because these conversations, as annoying as they can be and as difficult as they can be, I really truly believe that each and every one of them is an opportunity to reconnect with your partner. I genuinely do.
Yeah. Well, let's step into another challenging realm of the consent space. Finances.
Oh, combining finances. I thought that I had reached every level of vulnerability with my partner until we combined finances. And I felt like the most emotionally naked that I have felt
Really?
in years. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Why?
Because, well, I had never combined finances with anybody before. I'd never lived with anybody before my current partner. And there's something different about like, oh, I'm going to be emotionally vulnerable with you. I'm going to tell you some secrets and hope you don't judge me. I'm going to be vulnerable with you in sex and maybe do some things I haven't done before, or I'm really going to connect with you. Giving someone access to your emotions and your body feels very different than giving someone access to your fucking money. It's so different, and it really hit. I was not expecting it, and the first time that I did it, it hit me really hard.
Wow.
It really did.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. Finances is a challenging space for anyone to navigate, both by yourself or with another person. Part of the thing, and this is a big thing that you can see in our country, is we have so much conflict because our representatives cannot agree on how to financially handle anything.
Yeah.
There are different approaches to finances, so many different
Absolutely.
approaches. And somebody might go, I feel comfortable at having X amount of money in my bank account. Someone might be way lower than that or way higher than that, and that will create stress in your relationship. There's also spending habits. and the things that you do or do not agree are valuable, important things to spend on, and also at the rate of which things get spent on.
One of you might not be thinking so much about savings or retirement because the planet could explode at any moment, and experiences are very important to me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to spend now, and then another partner might get a lot of safety and security out of putting a lot of money away. So where do you find the balance? And especially when you're married and you're legally one entity, like at what point do you, like, whose call is it?
Well, so here's a different thing, and this is why it comes down to consent and what we talked about as the key part of this, which is your partner, even though you are making these decisions as a team, is still an individual and still entitled to some autonomy. This is something, finance is a situation where you are not actually entitled to full autonomy with our money.
No, absolutely not.
That's a big difference between like what we've been talking about previously
Yes.
on the episode. The other one's full autonomy. This one, you don't have full autonomy, but you do need to have some autonomy. So for example, let's say you're the partner that's making the majority of the money. Your other partner is struggling. They're in a phase in their life where they're struggling. They're coming up short. And then you see that they've spent money on something that you feel is unnecessary. And you might be in that space, be like, you don't have the money or the freedom to spend on that thing because that's not a priority in our situation. I had to pay your half of rent, so you shouldn't be allowed to buy yourself a snack. Or,
That's
or
such a productive way to start that conversation.
Or go
Peter.
to the movies. Do you know what I mean? But
Absolutely.
that is how some people treat it. And you have to
100%.
remember, if this person were not with you, and let's say, yeah, maybe they were delayed on rent or whatever was going on, or they were in a financial stressful time, they would still go to the movies with their friends because that thing may be offering them some stress release in the incredibly stressful time of being financially unstable.
Oh, I have been financially stable a lot. And do I limit the things I do with my money? Yes. Do I stop myself from living my life entirely, even though it might not be the most responsible thing? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because I'm never going to have enough energy to get up and fucking go to work if I'm not seeing friends in some capacity. And, you know, especially with finances, unfortunately, you also have to watch out for situations of financial abuse. If there is a primary earner in the relationship, like let's say in a typical stay-at-home spouse, stay-at-home parent situation.
They control the purse.
Right. This whole concept of my money versus your money
Or our money.
but that's the thing, right? Because a lot of time in marriages, in situations of financial abuse, there is a breadwinner and they are severely limiting their spouse's access to that money, requiring permissions for spending, and completely ignoring the fact that if you are a homemaker, it is tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of value and work that you are putting into the home, especially if children are involved.
Yeah, because then you could be like, okay, well, all the money that we would have spent on daycare or childcare,
housekeeping,
that's the money
cooking,
I have to spend.
personal assistant to shop and drop off dry cleaning
Right.
and run all these errands, all of that is left to me. And the whole like, oh, my spouse is the main breadwinner, so he gives me an allowance. That makes me cringe and that makes me hesitate. An allowance is different from a budget.
Right.
Right? Like, hey, just letting you know, this is the amount of money that we have flexibility with to do fun stuff every month. I'm not going to limit what you choose to do, but just for our financial well-being, there is a number limit on what you can do. right? And there are lots of ways to negotiate it.
Yeah.
You can put all of your money into a joint account. You can say, hey, this is what's needed to cover our bills every month. So that's what I'll deposit into the joint account, and everything else is mine to spend. Generally, I think it's a good idea if there is a big purchase coming up in your relationship, check in with your partner about it.
Yeah.
And you can decide what that limit is for yourself. It's like, hey, if it's over $500, maybe we should just talk about it.
Yeah.
It's over $5,000, maybe we should talk about it, right? Like all of that, you have to decide what's right in your relationship, but it is worthy of a conversation, and it's worthy of a conversation that we don't have a lot of practice in.
Yeah.
No one tells you how to talk about money.
Super dark board. It's like an HOA. Great. I agree. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, you have to be clear about the boundaries that you're setting. And you also have to kind of take things as a case by case scenario of we as human beings have a wide variety of needs.
At different
times. And there might be a moment where your partner spent a lot of money on something that was a sheer emotional need. And then you have to go, okay, like that sucks. That sucks in terms of like our books and our finances space. Is it really going to do damage to us? We can have that conversation, but I do also have to acknowledge that like it wasn't them just being an asshole or doing something willy-nilly. And then if you do have a partner that, because there are people that are like this, that spend without ever thinking about it, or, you know, are just fiscally irresponsible, that is something that you do need to negotiate and learn about your teammate way before you become financially merged in any way.
Before you merge your finances, you should know about debts.
Yeah.
You should know about the spending habits of each other. You should know about short-term and long-term financial goals.
Right.
Like maybe you get together and you don't ever want to purchase a property, and that's fine. Or you do. Or somebody has no credit card debt but student loan debt, or the opposite, or both, or someone's in bankruptcy. Like whatever it is, we talk about informed consent all the time, right? Like in order to make a good decision about what is safe and right for you and your partner, you need to know what the fuck is going on.
Well, let's merge two conversations. Ready for the merging? What if, because we just talked about not offering your partner advice, but your partner says, hey, I'm going to go take out a $60,000 bank loan because I have this idea for a business. This is my business plan. And you're like, there's a lot of holes in that business plan. This is a situation where you're like, okay, I do want to create space for you to take a risk. I don't know if it's going to fail or not. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen. Am I ready to also take said
that
risk?
Financial risk. I think that goes outside of advice. I think that goes way
Sure.
I think that goes way outside of advice. If now on one hand, if you say, hey, I have this idea, can I make a presentation to you and you poke holes in it? But honestly, no matter what step you're taking in a relationship, the question is, how can we do this in a way where we both feel safe?
Yes.
Because that's where that boundaries conversation sparks from.
Because somebody can cross their boundary and you just be like, yeah, but I just really need this business, and I don't need a naysayer.
Sure.
That's violating their partner's boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the whole key about consent and boundaries is so that everybody feels safe. So, and that doesn't mean like completely safe from anything possibly
Informed
going wrong.
risk.
What it means is how much risk are we willing to take on? How much discomfort are we willing to take on before it's not okay and it becomes intolerable, right? Because a lot of this stuff is not a black and white, yes or no. There's a scale. I think we've talked about before the scale of discomfort, right? On one side, we're totally comfortable. Then we're getting a little hesitant, and then we're uncomfortable, but we're still okay with being here. And then there's the danger zone.
Yeah.
where we are absolutely not safe and there's danger signals. And there's a lot of flexibility in there with sex, with finances, with alone time, with anything you want to do. So the question is, what works for you, what works for your partner, and what works for both of you at the same time?
Yeah. And these conversations are ongoing
Constantly.
because things change and your
Things
needs
change.
change. And let's go into navigating consent when it comes to each other's family. Another one.
Oh,
That's
so
a
hard.
big one.
It's a big one, and it's really difficult.
People have different families, and depending on what their relationships are, there are people that give their family members a lot more grace than they would give anyone else in their lives. And there's people that go into the boat of, well, when you're marrying someone, everything is a package deal. And I don't subscribe to that same thing.
Well, and sometimes it's on your partner to set a boundary with their family member
Right.
for you.
Yeah. Because you can have the conversation of being like, I get that you don't have this boundary with your mother or father or whatever. I have that boundary with them. And this is an important, and you as my teammate are going to need to assist me in supporting that boundary. You can't, this is part of the family thing, is like, you end up in, because they're family, you're team them or you're team us in a variety of different moments.
And it sounds really harsh, but there is a point where you have to choose a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Is your old family your priority, or is your new family your priority?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of in the camp that when you are in a long-term relationship and commitment to someone, that person takes priority.
I mean, sometimes.
Generally speaking.
Well, I think it's a case-by-case thing, because how serious is your long-term situation?
Given that it's a very serious, we are committed to each other, like, as from what we can see, we are life partners.
Yeah.
We are building a life together.
It also
That kind
depends
of partnership.
on your relationship with your family, because your family might be an amazing group of people that have been super supportive, and like, I mean, I don't know these families, but I know that they're there, they're possible, and I want to be one of them.
No, I am in two of them.
Great.
My family is very kind and supportive, and my partner's family is very kind and supportive. My partner also knows that if I am included in a group text with 15 of his family members, I'm going to fucking lose my shit.
You can opt out of group text.
I need to opt out of the group text, because if I open my phone and I have 107 text messages, I want to barf. Genuinely, I do.
That's a thing?
Do you-
I'm not.
So my partner has an Italian family.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of them. Like, all of his siblings and cousins, they all have at least 2, if not 3 kids. Like, everybody's just having big families, and they're very loving and affectionate, and I adore them to the ends of the earth.
Yeah. And they're all in a group text.
Not all the time, but sometimes. And I just told him, I was like, I don't want to be included in that. You're all kind, and you're all funny, and you're all supportive, and I love y'all. That does not make me feel loved, included, or respected. It just stresses me out. And then I feel like I feel like an asshole for not being excited about this fucking group text.
And then someone's like, what's wrong with Rachel that she doesn't want to be in the group text?
She never responds to the group text.
To the group text. I mean, it's hard. You know, I the thing that I will advocate for, especially when it comes to your family, is you have to be a champion for your partner's boundaries.
Absolutely.
Especially sort of like knowing where there are. Whenever I Zoom with my mom, I don't assume Allison is included.
That's a really good one.
And she'll pop in if she wants to, but I have very much established with my family that, like, if I'm calling to do a virtual visit, it's me, and even though I'm married and that we are a team,
You're still your
she
own
gets
person.
to opt in to the calls that she wants to be a part of.
100%. 100%. And on the flip side of that, sometimes it can be a real relief. Not that you should not that you should shirk the responsibility of establishing your own boundaries with your family members, but sometimes it can be really helpful to have a partner back you up. Like
Yeah.
my mom is super energetic, super helpful, super loving. And sometimes
Great at hosting baby showers.
great at hosting baby showers,
Amazing.
the best. But also sometimes is not all that respectful of boundaries because of how much she wants to be involved and wants to help. And especially in the process of like having a baby and, you know, who's going to be at the hospital and what do visiting hours mean? My partner sees me like, oh my God, like my mom wants to be as involved as possible and I need her support, but I need her support in specific instances. It makes me feel really good for my partner to go, hey, I'm happy to have that conversation with your mom.
Oh.
And it's not that
Yeah.
I can't stand up for myself because I can, but there's like a cost benefit analysis that has to happen.
For sure.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
like I'm trying to minimize stress right now.
Yeah.
And my partner feels very protective of me right now. So is it going to be an overall positive for me to have this very emotionally fraught conversation with my mom about boundaries?
Yeah.
Or would it be the most beneficial for my partner to have it because my mom's not going to give him the same pushback that she would give me? And he gets to, I don't know, he kind of like it feels good to stand up for your partner. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
like, oh, I'm such a good partner. I'm so helpful and supportive.
Yeah.
That feels good. And I feel very supportive when he offers to take that off my plate.
That's great. That's a huge, what a wonderful boundary that we've set up. I know that we're talking and we can have a whole series of episodes about family consent and it's challenging because everyone has such different family dynamics, different family assumptions. You know, like my dad's side of the family assumes that family is involved with everything across the board all the time. I don't have the same relationship with them, but I know that is the place that he operates from. So like someone in the family could be a huge asshole. Somebody in the family could be a huge criminal. Somebody in the family could have like done horrific things. And he's like, hey, they're family. They're at the next thing just because my dad doesn't have any boundaries when it comes to family.
Right.
I do. And my partner does. And you do have to have those tough conversations of it's also challenging because like there's different people of different generations that they're operating based off of different assumptions that existed at the time
That don't exist anymore.
that don't exist anymore. We live, part of the thing that's cool about our time right now is it's very customizable. Make a lot of your own choices.
It's true.
Define your boundaries wherever you want them to be.
And I think generally speaking, younger people are moving away from this idea of if they're family, you forgive all and you let it go because they're family. It's like, nope. Everybody, you have the right to make people earn a place in your life.
Yeah.
Just like the sentence that like love is and should be unconditional. I don't really agree with that. I think that like your presence should totally be conditional.
I don't think the phrase unconditional love is a good phrase.
No, it's not. And I do think there is a difference between unconditional love and unconditional support. Like I can love someone or like have loving feelings for them despite things that they do.
And still have boundaries.
and still have boundaries and limit their access to me and limit their access to people I love and do all of that. Also, another thing within families, the the idea of you being an autonomous person and needing alone time and needing time with friends, that really comes up against a tough wall when you have kids.
Yeah.
Because guess what? It's no longer hey, my time alone doesn't detract anything from you. No, now it's my time alone means you don't get alone time. Mm-hmm. Somebody needs to watch these children. Somebody needs to take care of these children. So that's a whole other conversation that needs to take place.
But there is so much negotiating that obviously has to happen when you have kids. And also, that does not negate the fact that you, as a team, need to find ways for you to meet your needs as a human. Mm-hmm. My wife and I are prepping ourselves to have kids, and one of the things that I said is going to be very important is that, like, once she's ready at her own space after the baby is born, that, like, she should do a show or find a thing to do on Wednesday nights. Like, I know that she is going to be a more recharged, happier person if she has a life that continues outside of being just a mother.
Oh my God. I think that's a really big fear of a lot of parents to be is I'm going to lose myself. I'm going to lose the life I had is gone. Right. I think that's a very common parenting narrative. And obviously I'm not a parent quite yet, but what I've seen from the parents that I am close to is things change, but you are still you. It's just up to you to make sure that the things are in place that allow you to still be yourself outside of this new identity of being a parent.
Yeah. And I don't think it's this, I mean, like, obviously you should be advocating for yourself in this situation, but we should also all be prepared to advocate for our partners, knowing that, like, hey, knowing my wife, she is going to want to be there 24/7. And I love that. I also know it's going to take a toll on her, and she is ultimately going to be happier having another aspect of her life that is
Kick her
outside
out of the house
yeah, but I'm like gonna have to do that. I'd be like,
in a very loving way.
Get the fuck out of here. Like,
I've got
go have a
this.
community, go hang with these people, because I need you to be as much of a full human as possible for this to go the marathon race that we're all on together. Like,
I
you
think-
need pit stops.
I think that's a perfect example of one of the key differences that I sort of realize needs to take place in a relationship. There's a big difference between being better to your partner and being better for your partner. Meaning, yeah, like, I'm sure my partner would love it if I gave him, like, massages and cooked for him every night. But what would that do to me and my self-esteem and my schedule? Sometimes I need to invest in myself to be better for myself, but also so I can show up as a better partner in my relationship.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older, I've kind of moved away from, like, being, like, prioritizing being good to my partner, more to prioritize being good to myself, because when I'm good to myself, I'm a better partner, and so many more things fall into place without as much effort.
It's also hard because we, in our relationships with our partners, we are their nest. It's like their space of comfort and healing. Sometimes you have to be challenging for your partner. We can't be enablers all the time.
No.
You know, and Citrix, I do believe in unconditional love. I definitely know I'll feel it for my kids. I definitely feel it from my puppies.
Again, I think unconditional love is fine.
Yeah.
And I do think it exists, and I'm sure I'll have unconditional love for my kid. But if something happens and my kid is harming me, I can love them and establish a boundary.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's the important
Both of
thing
those
is, like,
things are true.
loving and having boundaries.
Yes.
We're going to check on this last thing because we had it on our list. Medical issues.
Oh, yeah. If you are incapacitated, who do you give consent to make choices for you when you can't make those choices? And sometimes my spouse is not the right answer.
Right.
It's not always.
Yeah.
And if you're not in a marriage, if you're not in like a legally binding relationship contract, sometimes my mother is also not the right answer.
Right. Right. Oh man.
Who do you trust to make decisions for you when you can't make decisions for yourself? I think is what you really need to ask.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things that you have on here in our notes about medical history. Your partner's, I don't want to say right, but like what they should and should not and need to know about your health. Is it all an open book?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I do think if it affects your partner in the present time, it should probably be talked about.
Yeah. A lot of negotiating that needs to go
into long-term
relationships.
We're supposed to just know this person and they know you, and now you're on easy street. No.
Yeah.
No.
And even if you know your partner very well, don't assume you know all the things that are going on.
Yeah, that's true. Because there are some agreements you might make that need to change as time goes by.
Yeah.
Like my partner and I generally have an agreement of like, hey, if I'm asleep and you're feeling some kind of way, I give you permission to initiate with me. Because like we both feel safe and we both feel okay doing that.
Yeah.
My body is going through a massive change and it's about to go through an even bigger one. And so that's going to be something I'm going to take off the table for a while.
Sure.
Like, you know, and if you wake up in the middle of the night and you're feeling some way, go figure it out
Go
by
figure it out.
yourself. Don't bother me.
You got it.
You got it.
You got it.
Don't
You
fucking
need
bother me.
You don't need me on this one.
You know, like bodies change, feelings change, minds change.
There's also just, and this is again harping on how important communication is. We all have mental health that we also go through in varying periods of time. You know, like I will talk to my partner and be like, "Hey, listen," and this is part of me like doing the over communicating space. I'll be like, "Hey, I'm going through this depression right now. These are the steps that I'm taking. I'm fine. I'm okay. It's not something that's permanent. It's not something that you like need to worry about.
It's not your responsibility.
It's not your responsibility. I know it's going to affect our lives in X, Y, Z ways. But that's also different than just her coming home every day and I was just watching TV all day and not acknowledging what's happening and like not doing stuff around the house and letting things slip and not like that's a big difference because you are a team. And there is the like love space, but there's also, I acknowledge that you're struggling right now, but the answer can't be 0. The answer can't be that just like you're fucking done and I'm doing everything in our lives together.
No, sticking your head in the sand is not an okay solution when you're in a partnership.
There's also, and this is a really challenging conversation to have with your partner, when your partner is grieving.
Oof.
And that's a hard thing to be like, yo, I need you to get your shit together. That's never the thing to say when your partner is going through grief.
No. There's
great ways to have a lot of check-ins of like, I see you're having a hard time. I want to keep finding support, ways that I can support you so we can get you through whatever it is that you...
Right, because anything your partner is struggling with, it's not a just them. It's a both of you. And it doesn't mean that it's your fault. It doesn't mean that you are the only one that has to come up and fight for solutions. when you enter into a partnership, you're kind of agreeing that there's a lot of stuff we're going to have to do together. Your voice is important and my voice is important. Both of our needs are important. I think people can sometimes get into trouble when they put their needs on the back burner for an extended period of time. Sometimes, like,
Yeah.
if there is a medical issue, if there is an emotional issue, like, sometimes, yeah, you know what? This whole thing of like, everybody should be putting in 50-50 all the time
It's not how it works.
is super unrealistic.
Yeah.
Sometimes what happens is you're putting in a whole lot more effort than your partner is because they're just not able to.
Right.
And the thing is, you want to have the trust and communication skills built up that the expectation is your partner will work towards being able to balance that out. And then guess what? You have a little bit of a cushion built up if you suddenly get into a place where you can't bring as much to the table anymore.
Yeah.
Because then, hopefully, if you're in a relationship with the right person, your partner will want to step up for you the way that you did for them.
But also it's important to say that, like, as the other party where your partner is holding all the weight temporarily, you can't agree to do nothing.
No.
You can't say, hey, this is a thing that I went through and I'm going and if you're like, hey, I'm never going to be able to get over the thing that happened, something that happened, this is what it's always going to be, then you are back to renegotiating what your relationship is.
And whether or not you want to be in that relationship.
But that's really just an acknowledgement of, like, if that is true, if this is your new permanent state of being, we need to then reopen how we're going to deal with this partnership, because I'm happy to sign up to do 90% for a period of time, but I'm not going to always do 90% because I can't, because as a human being, I'm also going to need,
No.
if you're going to be my partner, there's going to be some times that I'm going to suffer and I'm going to need you to then show up for me. And if you're
Right.
telling me you can never show up for me,
That's
Then-
cruel and unrealistic. It
Um,
really is. And I think that that's taken advantage of sometimes in this classical view of marriage of like, well, you chose this person and you're there through thick and thin. There's, I heard about this. There's a kind of marriage in another country where if you don't like re-up your marriage license, the marriage is automatically dissolved after like 3 years or 5 years.
yeah.
That's something you have to keep
Opting into. Yeah.
Exactly. And I got to tell you, like, the idea of marriage really does scare the shit out of me because people do go through these changes. And the idea of like, oh my gosh, what if there's a fundamental shift and I'm no longer able to be with this person because what they need from me has changed in such a dramatic and fundamental way.
Yeah. I want to answer Sidetrack's conversation because it's really spinning off what we're talking about. When to tell your partner about trauma that you've gone through, and whether you or not you do need to. I mean, it's such a case by case situation. We've talked about that you have your right to your own privacy and autonomy. And if it's something that you are working on or you're working on with a therapist, no, I don't think that your partner needs to know. If it is something that really is affecting
Right.
aspects of your relationships.
If it's impacting the relationship, you still get to decide what you share and how you share it. But ignoring an elephant in the room, I don't think is helpful. It doesn't help foster trust. It doesn't help open the lines of communication. So if there is something traumatic that is affecting your relationship in a really big way, and maybe your partner's trying to bring it up and like, hey, what's going on here? And your answers are either untruthful or avoidant.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's the point that you need to take a look at what you do feel comfortable sharing. Even if it's, you know what, I'm not quite ready to share with you, but there is you're not crazy. I do have an issue around this. There is something that's going on and I'm working on it. If you can be patient with me, either like give me time to work on it or give me time to get comfortable enough to share it with you. Because
Yeah.
I do think that letting somebody in is a fundamental part of having an intimate relationship.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, there's also, and we're gonna get very real in this conversation right now, because it is a thing that does exist. There are people that have shared in their relationships that they have been sexually assaulted. And there are times where their partner meets that with, uh, like, I can't look at you the same, or something has like changed about our fundamental dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
In that situation, it's kind of like the take your no for an answer, because that partner clearly is not capable of holding space for you in the way that you need as a person that did experience that. And the news that you gave them did alter the dynamics of their relationship, pending on the weird, I don't want to say values, but I guess that's the right word that
Sure.
they have. Uh, but there are times that you will share something about yourself that is an incredibly vulnerable thing, that you hand this offering over to your partner, and it's too much for them, and they drop the ball, and it ends the relationship. And that in and of itself is traumatizing, and that doesn't mean that you can't share that news with future partners who are hopefully better equipped to handle that
Mm-hmm.
experience. I'm not going to say that you're always going to win, and that people aren't going to be shitty and not.
Unfortunately, not.
Yeah.
But also, that tells you that you should not be in a relationship with that
Yes.
person.
Yeah.
Because I think I really, again, I think a fundamental part of a long term relationship is being able to share those parts with somebody and have them hold them with respect and keep them safe
Mm.
and still see the best in you.
Yeah.
Um, but it's really up to you because your first obligation is to yourself and to keep yourself safe. So take as much time as you need to figure out if that is a safe person to share whatever's going on. And again, it's so nuanced. You have to make this decision for yourself. You really do.
Yeah. I mean, sharing a big thing will, no matter what it is, and no matter how good your partner is, will change the dynamics of your relationship
Mm-hmm.
temporarily, for a period of whatever.
But it does.
It does, and it may change it into a really amazing way. That they're like, oh my god, I understand so much about all the different things that you've gone through, the sensitivities and triggers that you have.
Mm-hmm.
I can be now more mindful, and I know better how to hold space for you in all these different ways.
Thank you for giving me this context.
Thank you for
Thank you for
trusting
trusting me.
me. Yeah.
Oh. In terms of like like emotional orgasms, handing something that you are struggling with or ashamed of to your partner and having them hold it safe for you.
Big deal.
God, it's one of the best feelings in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I also, and I'm extending this to everyone that is watching or listens to our show. We hold that same level of value and trust when you are sharing your questions to us, and opening up your lives. Like,
Absolutely.
I understand the responsibility that comes with having these conversations, which can be really sensitive, and yeah.
We I know we like to joke around a lot on the
Yeah.
show, but we're talking about this stuff because we take it really seriously and we think it's really really important. And your questions help us access more of the things that people need to hear because I guarantee for every single person that has a question, there are hundreds if not thousands of other people that are wondering the exact same thing.
Yeah. Man. Wow. What another wonderful episode.
Delightful.
I love doing all this. Thank you all for tuning in. We're gonna do
Thank
some
you all
rating
for
'cause
tuning in.
I'm remembering to do so.
Where are we gonna raid?
We're gonna raid Golden Boy if he lets me.
Look out, Golden Boy.
Anyway, the last thing I want to just remind everybody as you step into your relationships, again, this is such a key thing. Your partner is their own person going and having their own experiences, and those things are going to change all the time.
All the time.
Um,
And that's to be expected.
and that's why we have
and it's
to
okay.
have conversations and negotiate boundaries.
And offer your partner a little bit of grace. Offer yourself a little bit of grace that it's okay for you to change, and offer your partner a little bit of grace that it's okay for them to change. Because guess what? There's always a way to talk about it.
Yeah.
There's always a way to navigate it. Whatever the conclusion ends up being, it's always going to go well. It's always going to go better if you're able to actually voice it.
I love that. All right, gang. Well, thank you all so much. We'll see you
next
week with something other fun.
With something else about
Starting at
consent.
raid 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Goodbye.